Hello folks, this is Pastor Mike Hoggard coming to you from the Hall of the Justice League with another Watchman video broadcast dealing with the whole comic book issue. A little play on words there. We left off last week getting into this idea, let's see here, from Genesis chapter 6. The Bible was kind of telling us what to look for. In Genesis chapter 6, we have the story, I believe it, I believe the Word of God. In verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, so before the flood and after the flood, when the sons of God, and you just kind of think about how comic books would draw this out. The sons of God, these aliens or these extraterrestrial beings or the gods coming down to the earth. The sons of God came in into the daughters of men. That's Superman and Lois Lane having a baby. That's what that is. Or Starman, and I can't remember who it was, this woman having a baby. The movie with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan. Anytime you have Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan together, it's a hit. Nicolas Cage in the City of Angels. He's a god. He's a watcher. If you just get the imagery, if you've ever seen this movie, you get the imagery of them just standing around watching everybody. Going to the library, reading books and stuff. But anyway, he falls in love with Meg Ryan, and anyway. And when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And so we've been dealing with all the gods and the goddesses that have existed, or mythology has said existed, over the past 6,000 years. And what the Bible's telling you is that there's an air of truth here because of what happened when the sons of God came into the daughters of men. Gods like Mercury, he's the Flash. Isis, we talked about her, Wonder Woman. All of these different mighty, powerful Thor, these powerful gods who are the sons of the gods and so on, who have all these magnificent powers. And we left off last week dealing with this issue, something that we have dealt with many times before, but now it takes on a different aspect. Now when we see it in comic books, we kind of get this whole idea of what exactly is going on. We started talking about the dying God issue, or the God who gives his life for others, dies, and then he's resurrected again. Let me show you what that looks like in the Bible. So I'll show you the truth of it, and then you'll see how it's portrayed in these comic books and in these movies and TV shows and everything like that. In Revelation chapter 13, and here's something that I've caught on to in studying the Bible, is that you have Christ, you have Antichrist. You have Christ, who is the Son of God, through a virgin woman, and you have the Antichrist, who is the son of Satan, through a harlot woman. I mean, you just see the opposites here. So we have the beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. In verse 2 of Revelation 13, the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear. His mouth was the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw gave him his power. He's got powers. He can do stuff. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So, all throughout mythology, you have the story of this dying God who gives his life, and then he awaits resurrection, or he has already been resurrected. And so, let's look at the real Jesus, who gave his life for the sins of mankind, gave himself for a ransom, and his blood atones us, whereby we were sinners, and now Christ died for us. That means in our place, and he took all of that on himself so that you and I can be free and we can live forever in heaven. The Antichrist is another Jesus. He has sort of this same idea. There was a documentary, I've only watched part of it, called Zeitgeist, and it tried to show that the spirit that is working today is the spirit that's always been, and it tried to show that basically Jesus was just another one of these myths that people invented to have power over people. That's not true. There was a Jesus. He was the Son of God. He died for the sins of mankind and rose again on the third day. And you have to understand, the devil is the great imitator. He imitates what he knows what God's plan is. He imitates that to try to draw people away from the real Christ, to his false Messiah. So in mythology, you had all these gods that died in offering their life for some benefit to mankind or the people around them. And then they were buried, or they were forgotten, or whatever, and then they were resurrected. One of them was Mithras. We dealt with this in the video called Jesus Christ, Another Jesus, Another Spirit, Another Gospel. Forgive me, it's early this morning. Another Jesus, because Mithras was this dying god who awaits resurrection. Here's a graphic of Mithras, and if you look over here, I mean, he's got the body of a human, he's got the head of a lion. Mithras would have made an awesome superhero in a comic book. I mean, I don't know why somebody hasn't jumped on this. Well, maybe they have. But anyway, notice he's got wings, he's got the body of a man, and look at the muscles he's got on him. And look over here, he's performing some sort of miraculous feat. It looks like he's got some kind of animal by the horns, and he's going to kill them and all this stuff. And so this idea of Mithras being this dying god, he was worshipped. Those who followed the cult of Mithras were initiated a certain way. Manly Hall, in the Secret Teachings of All Ages, said this: candidates who successfully passed the Mithraic initiations were called lions and were marked upon their foreheads with the Egyptian cross. Stop right here. This same beast that rose up out of the sea, it says here in verse 17 of the same chapter, that no man might buy or sell save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So everyone in verse 16 had to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. And those who were initiated into the cult of Mithras eventually received a mark on their foreheads. Now, I'm going somewhere with all this. The reason why I'm teaching this, number one, because this comic book superhero thing is big, and it's captured the minds and the attention of people. Is it just for our cheap thrills and entertainment, and for us to fantasize about, oh, I wish I was Superman, and you get this image of some fat guy in a Superman suit pretending he's something he's not? Or does it have a diabolical end? And I believe that the false prophet, and we talked about that early on, the false prophet, his job is to lead everybody into worship of the son of Satan, the beast, and eventually receive a mark in the right hand or forehead. So this was the initiation of the cult of Mithras, the superhero, half God, half human, who gives his life. And in the Mithraic initiations, Freemasonry borrowed from the Mithraic initiations, where you have the death of Hiram Abiff. Hiram is the one who has the secret. He has the secret powers of building a temple. And he's killed, but he's resurrected with the grip of the lion paw. That's what the lion here represents. It's not the lion of the tribe of Judah. There are two lions in the Bible. There's Christ, the Lion of Judah, but there's also the devil, our adversary, as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And so we have Hiram Abiff resurrected back to life again through the grip of the lion paw. This is done in the Masonic ceremonies. So you see it in Mithraism, you see it in Freemasonry. And I believe that we're seeing mankind go through these initiations on a very, very grand scale. And I think educating people about the cults, about mythology, about Mithras, about Apollo, Dionysus, all these gods, I think educating these people and getting them to think in the direction of the mystery cult is what's leading people to receive the mark in their right hand or in their forehead. He mentioned that they received the mark on their forehead and the sign of the Egyptian cross. Let me show you what that looks like. It looks like a cross, but it has an oval on top of it. It's called an ankh. Here's a picture of Isis. You remember her? Oh, mighty Isis. And in the comic book and the children's TV series, Isis has this sun disk with these bull horns coming out of her head. That's where her magic powers are. But Isis' job, she holds the Ankh in her hand. And the Ankh is a symbol, let me explain it. The Ankh is a symbol of, in Egyptian mythology, it's the symbol of resurrection. Remember, Osiris is dead. Mithras is dead. Superman is dead. Okay, we're going to go there. And Isis needs to bring him back to life because that's her husband. So she does so. She has the power in her hand with the Ankh symbol. And the Ankh simply represents the male and the female. You figure it out. That's what it represents. Sons of God and daughters of men and their offspring. That's what was. So when you look at this graphic here of almighty Isis wearing the bull horns and the sun on her head, and that is her husband Osiris, she is using the Ankh to resurrect him back to life. Interestingly enough, there's a comic book for that. It was called Dr. Fate, and that was his symbol of magic power. Dr. Fate, I never read Dr. Fate. I think that was Marvel. I may be wrong. I'm getting a lot of email from people saying, hey, Marvel all the way. Okay, I get it. But anyway, Dr. Fate here has these magic powers, and his powers come from the Ankh. Now, the guys who wrote these comic books, they just didn't pull this out of a hat. They knew what they were talking about, and I'm going to show you a little bit about some of the comic book authors a little bit later on. These guys did their homework. They knew exactly what they were talking about. They knew exactly what they're doing. It's similar to me. I study the Bible. I want to be able to teach people the Word of God. I want to be able to teach it plainly. Paul said we use plainness of speech. In teaching, we're not trying to teach some mystery, secret doctrine that nobody can know about it. We're going to teach you plainly the doctrines of Jesus Christ. Well, these guys, they draw out the doctrine and the teaching of the Antichrist, but they do it in secret. But they do their homework. They know exactly what they're talking about. I had mentioned before that J.R.R. Tolkien, in drawing together his ideas for the fantasy world of Middle-earth and the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and the Silmarillion and all these things that he wrote, he was a professor of mythology, specifically Norse mythology. So he knew what he was talking about. So if you've ever looked at and read the Lord of the Rings, and you know a little bit about mythology, you can see it in there. You can see some of the names that he used in his trilogy, in his books, in his writings, and things like that. One of them was the character Mithrandir. Mithrandir is Mithras. That's where Tolkien got the name and the concept, because you have this magician, you have this wizard. And let me back up a little bit, because the idea is that when Osiris is resurrected, he's more powerful now than he was before he died. That is a constant, consistent theme that we see all throughout the whole comic book thing, is that now that they've resurrected, now they've got really superpowers. So here is the Lord of the Rings, and Tolkien is teaching you about Mithras, but he calls him Mithrandir. And he's called Gandalf the Grey. The elves called him Mithrandir. And he's Gandalf the Grey. He can do this magic, but he gets into a battle with, I can't remember who it was, and he's cast into the underworld, and he dies, but he's brought back to life. And now Mithrandir, is Gandalf the White. Now he's more powerful than he ever has been. Shouldn't have killed me, buddy. And this is what happens with Osiris. We see it. Do you remember Star Wars? Oh, I do. Okay. So here we have Obi-Wan Kenobi. Notice the similarities between him and Mithrandir. You have this aged sage, this grand wise man who knows all the secrets and all the mysteries, and he's been banished and he's forbidden and all this stuff. And so in Star Wars Episode 1, which was the first movie, never figured that out. But anyway, Star Wars Episode 1, we find Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he has all these secret knowledge. He knows how to command the 4 elements to make the Force, so he can go like that. And At the end of Star Wars Episode 4, Movie 1, you see that famous scene where Obi-Wan Kenobi is fighting Darth Vader, and who is his old nemesis slash his old buddy. And at some point, Obi-Wan Kenobi looks at young Luke Skywalker, who is the son of Darth Vader, although he doesn't know it yet, and he just sort of does this, and Darth Vader cuts him in half, and there's no body there. You see Obi-Wan Kenobi now showing up in the form of this voice. Let go, Luke. I remember playing in the arcades. They used to have this game, Star Wars. And man, the graphics were like lines, and they were amazing. But anyway, I'm playing Star Wars in the thing, and I can never shoot the things down inside the Death Star. I can never make it through the tunnel. I keep getting hit all the time. And so there is Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice in the video game telling you, let go, Luke. So I thought, oh, okay, so I let go of the joystick. Crash! Oh, that wasn't for me, was it? Obi-Wan Kenobi now is more powerful than he was before he got killed. Where did George Lucas get the idea for who Obi-Wan Kenobi was? The Jedi. He got it from Egyptian mythology. Remember, mighty men of old, men which were of renown. There was a famous, although some say he never existed, he shows up in one book of Egyptian mythology. He was a very, very powerful magician. He was called the Jed, D-J-E-D. So George Lucas pulled from him these magicians who have this power. Supposedly, the Jed, this magician, they did a test of him, and he had the head of a goose cut off, and here's the head over here, and here's the body over here. And through his magic powers, he made the head of the goose waddle over to the body of the goose, and the head connected back to the goose. That's the mythology that was told about him. But here's the interesting thing, is that the Jed, this magician, and here's the Jed pillar. Notice the symbol of the Ankh. This was in reference to the Jed, the magician. The Jed had magical powers similar to the magicians that faced off against Moses in the book of Exodus. You remember Moses said, Moses took his rod, cast it down, turned into a snake. Pharaoh said, guys, show him what you can do. Show him what you showed me last night. And they did the same thing. These guys were powerful magicians. They had superpowers, by the way, of devils. And the idea of the Jedi and the Jed and these magicians, I don't think that that's a coincidence. What I'm saying is that all this stuff about the Force and Mithras and all of these churches that are trying to teach you that the battle between good and evil can be seen in the Bible, and it can be seen in Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings and Superman. So really we're supposed to be able to understand the Jesus that they want you to believe in from mythology. Here's the problem. Peter said that we had not followed cunningly devised fables in telling you the story of Jesus Christ. We didn't follow the mythologies and the fables of Mithras, the dying god. We told you plainly the story of the Son of God who died for the sins of mankind. And he said, I heard the voice of God saying, this is my beloved Son. But he said, we have a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto you do well that you take heed. He's talking about the Holy Bible. So here's all these churches now telling you, oh, Mithrandir is Jesus because he died and resurrected. The lion from C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis borrowed all his ideas from Tolkien. The lion in The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe, he's Jesus because he dies and is resurrected. No, there's another lion that does that called Mithras. Lord of the Rings, oh, you can see Jesus there. Or Star Wars. You know, it's good how Darth Vader used to be bad, and now he's good through the power of the Force. Come on. We're supposed to teach people about Jesus through the Bible, not through cunningly devised fables. And so this brings in what is the biggest thing going on right now, and that is the movie The Man of Steel. I started seeing this before the movie actually came out, as probably many of you did. If you attend a church somewhere, the churches, there is a marketing company. They make money They make a lot of money. That's their job, is to make a lot of money. They contract with the movie studios. The movie studios wants to market their films. So the marketing company contracts with the film company. The film company pays them money. Then the marketing company goes out and goes to these churches and sells these packets of film clips, and they've got guys in cubicles that are writing prefabricated sermons for the preacher to preach. It's not how it's supposed to be done. And so they watch this. Now, the marketing company gets money from the movie studio. The marketing company again gets about $1,000 a pop from the churches to get these movie clips and these pre-recorded, prefabricated sermons, so the pastor doesn't have to do anything. Just give them money and they'll give you the sermon to preach. And they're promoting these movies inside these churches. And this is what they did with The Man of Steel. If you watch The Man of Steel, you understand that The Man of Steel was basically a 2-hour evangelistic film for Mithras, for the dying God who's resurrected, who gives his life in aid for mankind and is resurrected, and now he's more powerful and all this. It's the same story, is what it is. And here these churches all over the country are promoting the wrong Jesus. Let me show you. I went to see the movie because I had a feeling this is what they were going to be dealing with. The date that the movie came out, 6/14/13. They did that on purpose. 6 and 14 is 20, plus 13 is 33. That's when the movie came out. There's a reference, in case you don't know what that means. Let me just show you this. The son of Satan, guess when his birthday is? February the 2nd. It's the 33rd day of the year. In Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike has a big number 33 right on top of this double-headed eagle that represents, he's got 33 stars here, Ordo ab Chaos. Order comes out of the chaos, comes out of the pit. That's what this is referencing. That's what that's talking about. Jesus. Superman tells you in this movie that he's 33 years old. So there is a connection. You will say, well, Jesus was 33. There is a reason why. Jesus came when he died. He destroyed the power of this guy here. And the Bible says that he made a show of his enemies openly on the cross. That's why he was 33. He was showing the death of this guy right here. That's what he was doing. So anyway, The Man of Steel comes out on this particular day, and I'm following along as we see the story of the God who comes down from heaven. He is a secret God, which means he can't tell everybody his real identity. He is from Krypton, which means secret. You didn't know that, did you? Okay, that's what you thought. Well, it's named after the element Krypton. The word Krypton means secret. That's where he came from. And in this movie, General Zod, they had to retell the whole thing. General Zod is the protector of Krypton. And General Zod wants Kal-El. I'll tell you what that means in a minute. And he knows he's on Earth, and he threatens all of mankind. I'm going to destroy humanity unless I get Kal-El. And so here Kal-El, young Superman, Clark Kent, goes into a church of all places. And he's talking to the priest in there, and the priest said, "Are you troubled, my son?" You know how they do. And Kal-El, the son of Krypton, the son of Jor-El, is talking about how I'm that guy. I'm the guy they want. And I don't know if I should do this or not. What he's doing, he's not sure if he wants to go give his life in sacrifice for all of humanity. And he's in a church, and he just happens to be, by the miracle of movies, his image is right in front of this mural that's inside this church. Here it is right here. This image of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane before he goes to offer his life for mankind. And Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane going, "Father, I don't know if I want to do this or not, but nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done." And here is Kal-El doing the exact same thing, and they put him right in front of this image. And I'm going, I get it. I know what that is. Then you see him. Now he's going to do it. Now he turns himself in. And you see him being led away in handcuffs. And here is an image, this famous picture of Jesus Christ in handcuffs before Pontius Pilate. It's the same. They're trying to get you to think that Superman is Jesus. He's the Savior. He's the Messiah. Then he's up in space now, and he's seeing the hologram of his father, Jor-El. And Jor-El is telling him, son, you can do this. Go and give your life now for the entire world. And then I'm watching this and I'm just going, oh, come on. Because here's his image of Superman. He's floating out of the spaceship like this, making the sign of the cross. Remember Quetzalcoatl, and the image of the cross. Mithras, the image of the cross. All these other dying gods had the image of the cross associated with that, and that's what that's what Kal-El is doing. I made some notes during this movie. I mentioned that Kal-El, 33 years old when he does this, he's the son of Jor-El. Now, Jerry Siegel and Joel Shuster are the two guys who invented Superman. They invented Superman, Jor-El, Kal-El, Krypton. They invented all this stuff. These were two Jewish men, probably were trained somewhat in Judaism, which by and large is Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah. So they named these gods El, E-L. That's the Hebrew word for God, as in El Shaddai. They knew what they were doing. Jor-El, God. Kal-El, God. He's a God who comes to the earth to save mankind. In this scene here, where he's making the cross, Jor-El tells young Kal-El, you'll be the bridge that joins our world, Krypton, the secret, with their world. You'll be the bridge. You'll be what connects everybody with the world of the gods and the world of the humans. Take a look at this graphic here. This is from Freemasonry. It's called the Royal Arch of Freemasonry. Notice that it has a pillar on one side and a pillar on the other. One is representative of the earth. The other is representative of the stars or the gods. And they're joined together by what's called the keystone. Here's an image of the keystone. It joins the arches together, the two things, the bridge. It's what connects the gods and the humans together. Let me show you from the Bible what that looks like. You remember Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and he couldn't get his astrologers to tell him what that dream was, and so he was going to have them all killed and so on. And so Daniel steps up. God gives Daniel the interpretation of the dream, and he says, Nebuchadnezzar, you saw 4 kingdoms, and the 4th kingdom is unlike any of the others because it's made of iron. Stars have iron in them. And it's made of iron, and you see the feet and the 10 toes, it's iron mixed with miry clay. And so he says in Daniel chapter 2, he says, the iron, for you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle, in verse 43, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. In other words, there's going to be a bringing together of this star kingdom with the human kingdom. That's what was taught in Superman. That's the mystical mystery themes that if you didn't know any of this stuff, you wouldn't understand it. And so they're trying to teach it to you in a subtle fashion. And you have this in your mind now. Superman is what bridges between the God world and the human world. It's what connects them. That's what the Masonic keystone represents. Here's another graphic here. You see these 2 pillars, Jachin and Boaz. One has the world on it, and the other one has the globe on it. And you see the winding staircase that the Mason goes up to go into the most high place of the tabernacle. That winding staircase is DNA. In fact, the keystone itself is DNA. DNA is a crystal. It's a stone. And there's a connection in the seed of men between the God world and the human world, and that's what Jor-El represents. That's what they were teaching you in this movie. And someone pointed this out to me, and I'm just going, I'd never figured that. He said, Pastor Mike, you remember, not Superman, Spider-Man? Remember Spider-Man, and he's in love with MJ, Mary Jane? And there's that famous scene where you get the wet kiss. You remember that one? Notice that Spider-Man is pointing down and Mary Jane is pointing up. That's this. It's the square and the compass. He is the God who is hooking lips with the human. It's there. Let's go back and look at the history of the Superman movies. I just happen to have seen all of them. Okay, some of them, like the last two Superman movies that Christopher Reeve did, they were junk. Ugh, who came up with this stuff? The first two were good. Second two, Superman Returns was okay. Man of Steel, anyway. Let's go all the way back to the Salkinds movie. Alexander Salkind, Ilya Salkind, in the 1970s version of Superman. This was a blockbuster. I mean, people loved this movie. They fell in love with it. Jor-El actually is the one who proclaims in this movie he will be a god to them, because Kal-El's mother's worried that he'll be odd, he'll be an outcast. He says he'll be a god to them. So they're setting you up in your mind that he's going to be a god. And then in Superman 2, Kal-El falls to mortality and he mates with Lois Lane. So we have the gods mating with the human women. 5 years later, Kal-El goes to Krypton. He's away for 5 years. He comes back. He finds out that Lois Lane's his baby mama. He finds out he's got a baby from her, and he's kind of wondering about it, and Lex Luthor figures it out. Who's this boy's daddy? Because this little 5-year-old boy has got superpowers. Why is he 5 years old? Did you know that in the Omen movies, the first one that came out, little Thorn boy, Damien Thorn, 5 people get killed in this movie too. What does that have to do with anything? Revelation chapter 9, we have the opening of the bottomless pit, and the king of the bottomless pit, Abaddon, Apollyon, and all these devils come out of there for 5 months. Think of what Lucifer said in Isaiah 14, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That 5 is highly significant. So then in the remake, we're going to redo the whole Superman thing, the Man of Steel. Jor-El, before he sends Kal-El to the earth, he says, I have to get the codex. I have to get the codex. Most people, they don't know what that is. The word codex means a book. That's what a codex is. It's a scroll or a book, primarily a scroll. Those of you who study the Bible, you know anything about textual manuscripts, they have names. This is Codex Alexandrinus, Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Vaticanus, Codex B, Codex Aleph. They have all and they call them codexes because they are scripts rolled up in like scrolls. So Jor-El has got to steal the codex, which you find out is a skull. Hang on. You find out it's a skull, and you find out that the codex has in it all of the seed of everybody who would be born and has been born on Krypton. So we have the seed of the gods now inside of Kal-El. DNA. See, codex means a book. Psalm 139:16, thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. He's referring to, even though 1,000 years before Christ, 3,000 years before now, God is showing David what made him in his mother's womb. It wasn't just jelly. It was a book that God wrote that had all of his members written out even before they were fashioned in his body. David was describing DNA, and he called it a book. And so in Superman, the remake, The Man of Steel, this codex now, this Krypton secret, is in the form of a skull. Remember when we started out this series at Comic-Con, I told you that we had this imagery of this harlot woman, or Mary Magdalene, and she's got a book and she's got a skull. Here it is right here. The skull and the book go together. This is the DNA of the skull, the God who is in us. Take a look at this image here. The skull and the crossbones. The crossbones are the chromosomes. The skull is in there. We have the dying God already in us, and He is waiting His resurrection. In Matthew chapter 27, verse 33, and when they were coming to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, a place of the skull. What was that? What is this referring to? This is referring to Jesus, who dies on the cross, but where is the cross inserted into? The skull. The skull and cross bones was evident at Calvary. This was the enemies that Jesus was showing His defeat over in His death. Sort of like what the Bible said about Samson. The Bible says that Samson killed more of his enemies in his death than he ever did in his life. So that's what Jesus was doing. He was showing the death of the Antichrist on His death on the cross. The cross being jammed into the skull. Sort of like Jael, Heber's wife, back in the book of Judges, whose Sisera comes in, and he's a representation of the one who is against God's people. So he's a picture of the Antichrist. And he comes in and he falls asleep in Jael's tent. And Jael takes a big tent peg and drives it through his skull and kills him. Think of Jesus and the cross being fastened as a nail in a sure place in the place of the skull. Isn't that cool? But they're telling you in Superman the movie, the Man of Steel, that the hope for humanity is the DNA that's in the skull. That's what they're telling you. We go back to this image of Superman falling out of the spaceship like this. He is the God. Remember, He is the God who offers Himself as a sacrifice and then is resurrected so He can save mankind. You remember this scene from Spider-Man? Look what he's doing. The same thing. You see all the people carrying Him? And by the way, watch this now. His mask is off. In Spider-Man, you remember that? And all these people who are holding Him when He's making a cross, they know His real identity. They know His secret. So what do? When He finally comes back to life, what do? They give Him His mask. Here. We won't tell anybody. They're the Illuminati. They're the ones who know the secret. And they're the ones who know who this is. They're not telling anybody. I'm not telling you to go out and watch movies so you can understand this stuff. I'm telling you it's already there. And millions of people all over the world are watching it. And they're slowly but surely being subtly indoctrinated into this new mystery cult that's going to happen right in front of people's eyes. And they're going to go, I know what that is. Wait and see. Iron Man. Interesting. Because in Daniel 2, the kingdom that mingles themselves with the seed of men is the Iron Kingdom. They're going to make people into Iron Men. Iron Man 3. He is killed, supposedly, buried, and he is resurrected, but they have to keep it a secret for a while, and then he's revealed. And then, if you remember in Iron Man 3, if you saw the movie, if you remember in Iron Man 3, they found a cure to regenerate mankind, to make him live forever. That's Iron Man 3. Neo, hello, Neo, I am the architect. Remember that? From The Matrix. Neo is told by the Black Isis, the Black Madonna, who is the oracle in this. See, the Wachowski brothers, they went and got all of this stuff from all the mystery religions, and that's who the oracle represents. If you've never seen the movie, just ignore me for a few minutes. But if you have, you know what I'm talking about. She is a black woman. She is the Black Isis, the Black Madonna. She is Isis. She is the oracle. She is the mother of the Matrix. The architect, which is a Freemason term for God, is the father of the architect. You see the idea here, the father and the mother, and they have worked together to create Neo, who is the one. And so when Neo first presents himself to the Black Madonna, to the oracle, he asked her, "Am I the one?" She said, "No, at least not this life. I just love candy." So you think, wow, I thought he was the one. He's not the one. So at the end of the first Matrix movie, Neo's facing off with the evil devil, Agent Smith, and they gut him down. And he's laying there dead. You're going to like this. You remember Isis holding the Ankh in her hand? And she uses it to resurrect Osiris? Neo's girlfriend, Trinity, she's in the real world. Neo's in the Matrix. If you don't understand it, just ignore me for a few minutes. When Neo's shot down by Mr. Smith, Agent Smith, Trinity is the one who brings him back to life with her kiss. So now Neo is resurrected. Now he's the one. And instead of Neo dodging all these bullets, and you see him fighting Agent Smith, he's just like going. And it's nothing to him. And then they're firing all the bullets and he just goes, and they all stop in midair and drop to the ground. See, now he's more powerful than he ever was in his first life. It's a constant theme in comic books, in these movies, and they're teaching you the doctrine of the Antichrist. Now, we're going to kind of go back a little bit to how all of these comic book ideas, these ideas for all these gods and these superheroes and everything like that. Let's go back and do a little history, and we're going to work our way into the 20th and 21st century. You have this concept called the rise of the Supermen. There was an occult revival in the mid to late 1800s. You understand that since the coming out of the King James and the Protestant Reformation, you had Christianity spreading like wildfire all over the earth. Missionary societies preaching Jesus everywhere, preaching the cross, preaching salvation. And after a while, people got tired of organized religion, like the Church of England, the Church of Rome, things like that. They got tired of the organized religion. So in places in Europe and France, England, places like that, they began to look in other places. And what you had was this really huge outpouring of this occult knowledge and so on being taught everywhere. Blavatsky and Crowley, we're going to talk about some of these guys. They were disillusioned with the whole church establishment thing, so they went searching after other ideas and other ways of finding some sort of religious fulfillment. Now I'm going to show you this from the scriptures because God ordained this and God knew that this was going to happen. So he told about it and he warned about it. Revelation 13:11, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. There's software called Dragon Speaking. Anyway. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying, to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. So we find out that the false prophet, he speaks like a dragon. He speaks in these whispers and this mystery talk. And he does great wonders, so he has superpowers. And his job is by way of these miracles. Here I come to save the day. You remember Mighty Mouse, don't you? By means of these miracles, he has the power to draw every man to the dying God who's resurrected. That's what the Bible's telling you. Even in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy 13, if there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, let us go after other gods, plural, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God proveth you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. So God was warning about a false prophet. Let's see. Steve Gerber, Jim Mooney. These would be Roy Thomas, editor. These would be, oh, and can't forget Charles Atlas. These would be guys who work for the false prophet. They're telling you a story to try to lead you to wanting the Justice League to come, the Avengers to show up, these other gods. And God said, don't hearken to him. Don't listen to this stuff, because I'm using them to prove you whether or not you're going to follow me or not. See, when we say we're going to serve God and serve Christ, God says, okay, I'm going to prove that. We'll see if you really mean what you say. So he allows false prophets to teach the other side so that we'll go, you know what? No, I'm not going to fall for that. I'm going to stick with the Word of God. And that's what God is doing. Notice in Matthew 24, getting ready for the coming of Christ, the second coming, Jesus said, many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. False prophets, plural. Matthew 24:24, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible they shall deceive the very elect. This is what Superman and the Avengers and Mithrandir and Harry Potter being taught in the church is exactly what it's doing. False Christ. Superman is not the Jesus of the Bible. It's another Jesus. And the false prophets feeding into these churches. Here, we prefabricated the next 4 sermons you'll preach. Go play some golf. Go do whatever it is you want to do all week long instead of study the Bible. We wrote a sermon for you. All you got to do is stand up, show the movie clips, say what it is we tell you to say. Everybody will applaud you and put money in your offering plate. And the preacher goes, and this is the good life here. It's the false prophet system. By showing people false Christs, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Superman, Mithrandir, showing them false Christ, false prophets are teaching great signs and wonders. That's what these superheroes do. It's not possible to deceive the very elect, or the word very means truly. The truly elect. But those church fakers, they're falling for it. Right and left. Let's go back now to the 1800s, sort of see how all of this stuff came about. You had Charles Darwin introducing a concept that no one had really thought of. See, everybody had just accepted what the Bible said, that we were created to be special and unique in God's image. We were created on the 6th day. The whole universe was created in 6 days, and God rested on the 7th. That's what everybody had. And then Charles Darwin shows up and says, no, it's not that way. I believe he taught evolution, that it took billions and billions of years. And over the course of time, mankind started out as nothing. And then he had a paradigm shift, and he grew legs and arms. And then he wallowed around in the half ocean, half land with legs and arms, and another paradigm shift, and he had lungs. And then another paradigm shift because he saw food up in the tree he couldn't get to. He learned how to climb trees. And then another paradigm shift. He saw that it was better on the land, so he came down on the land. And then he had another paradigm shift, and he learned how to make weapons and kill animals and dig ditches. And then he made computers. And then mankind is on the verge of making his own evolution, his own paradigm shift. That's what Charles Darwin released into this world. Now, we've talked about her. Probably the most ugly woman in the world. And if you're this ugly, you should really serve God, because that's all you've got going. Helena Blavatsky, Madame Blavatsky, she taught evolution, but she hated Darwin. She called Darwin an idiot, something like that. Because Darwin said, now this just all happened by scientific chance, random efforts taking place. Blavatsky came out on the mystical side and said, it was evolution, all right, but it wasn't chance. The gods have been taking over, leading us into the next paradigm shift. So she believed in 7 root races, and that over time these races evolved into a higher being. We are in the, I can't remember what she said, but we're awaiting what Hitler was looking for, the Aryan race. We're waiting for the next step in man's evolution. That's what Darwin released. That's what Blavatsky started telling everybody. So that one day we won't be just humans anymore. We'll be gods. That concept inspired, and I believe in inspiration, I believe devils inspire people to do the things they're doing, to write the books they're writing, to conceive of the comics that they're drawing, and to write rock and roll songs. You remember a group called Styx? You know what Styx is? Not, 1, 2, pick up sticks. Styx is the river that flows through hell. I have a theory in the Bible that it's called the river Euphrates. Can't prove it yet, but I think it's there. But anyway, this mythological river that flows through hell is Styx. That's where they got their name from. And they wrote a song called The Serpent is Rising. Here's the words. In the abyss of space, from the center of time. Sounds like Krypton to me. The abyss. That's the pit. That's the bottomless pit. Chaos. A Superman race moves the serpent to climb. The journey has lasted 7 ages. That's where he got it from. Got it from Blavatsky. Or more. Life after life, reincarnation, must pass through the door. The secret revealed when you leave your cave, that is, stop right here, that's Superman coming out of Smallville, the cave. Now he's going to be revealed as Superman. Is a glory of thunder and life from the grave. The serpent is rising, uncoiling in your spine, bringing you light from the depths of your mind. So these concepts that were birthed in the 1800s clearly were seeded and have now coming to fruition right here in front of our very eyes. So that even just, rock and roll is all supposed to be about sex and drugs and whiskey drinking, right? No. There is an occult agenda in these songs to bring people to the next paradigm shift, the next stage of evolution. The false prophets are writing songs. And they're drawing comic books. And they're writing novels. And then they're teaching doctrines. And they're doing it, let me get out Leonard Sweet here, they're doing it in the church too. And everybody but the very elect is falling for it. Along the same time of Blavatsky, you had a fellow by the name of Eliphas Levi. Eliphas Levi was a major occultist. This guy was a nasty guy. I have some books by Blavatsky. I've kind of looked at some things in there. I won't read Crowley. I've read Marilyn Ferguson. I won't read Crowley. He was nasty, mean, bad. I won't read. I've got books in PDF form by Levi. I don't look at them too much. Eliphas Levi, he's the guy that came up with this famous, and we use this all the time because it's a picture of the beast, this famous picture of Baphomet. Baphomet, as you remember, is a superhero because he has wings. Look at those wings, okay? And he's got horns, like here, like Magog, okay? He's got horns like Magog, and he's got fire shooting out of his head for some reason. He's got a pentagram. Remember the number 5. He's got male and female parts. That's kind of gross. Stop right here. Now we're seeing in the comic books the transgendered and sodomite characters, male and female together in the same body. So he's half human, half God, beast and angel and human all together. And Eliphas Levi is the guy who drew this image. Did so, I believe, by inspiration. Now, Eliphas Levi got into some serious magic. And he was trying to conjure this very, very powerful demon or devil. He was trying to conjure him. And he worked for a long time. He had this special room built, and He had this special script all worked out. He had power thoughts written down on papers, what he had. Put himself inside of a magic circle with these candles. Notice the image of Baphomet in the background. And he conjures this very, very, very powerful devil. And he looks amazingly like Yoda. Conjure me, you will not. That's where George Lucas got Yoda from. This extremely bad, nasty, powerful magic devil that Eliphas Levi conjured up. I mean, look at it. That's Yoda. Ha 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 ha. Where did the name Yoda come from? There's a Hebrew letter called Yod. It's in part of what they call the Tetragrammaton, the Yod-He-Va-He of Jehovah. Here's a quote from Manly Hall. In modern Masonry, the deity is symbolized by an equilateral triangle, its three sides representing the primary manifestations of the Eternal One, that's Neo, who is himself represented as a tiny flame called by the Hebrews Yod. Yod, Yoda, this devil that was conjured up by Eliphaz. Are you seeing a pattern here? There was an occult explosion. The seeds of occult ideas were sown all over the world, and now the fruition of those seeds is coming to pass, and we're seeing them come right in front. Here's a graphic of this Yoda, this Yod inside the triangle. It's like a picture of the mark of the beast. Here's a picture of Aleister Crowley. He's got a mark on his forehead, which is the symbol of the all-seeing eye, the Yod in the triangle with the lights coming out. Notice he's got a triangle over his head. Okay? Notice he's doing this. Okay? You know what this means? Sons of God, daughters of men. That's what he's portraying here. He is Baphomet. He is the fusion of these. He is Superman's son. That's who he is. And he has godlike powers. Aleister Crowley wrote the book Magic. See the symbol on there, the two serpents, DNA with the third thing coming out of it, the solar god. The magic of Aleister Crowley, the Golden Dawn, the works of Aleister Crowley. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's a book in there called Justice League Dark, in the Dark. It was a graphic novel based upon the ideas and concepts of Aleister Crowley. I'm telling you, these guys who write these comic books know exactly what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They have learned. They've been trained well. And I'll show you that in a little bit. One of the followers, and we've talked a lot about Aleister Crowley. I won't get much into him. We have a video called The Prophets of the New Order, if you want to go look at that. I teach you a little bit more about Crowley and Crowley's influence. The Beatles put Crowley on their Sgt. Pepper's album. His picture's on there as one of their influences. All right? Anyway, Crowley had some disciples. One was a guy by the name of Jack Parsons. If you don't know who that is, Jack Parsons was the guy who basically is the father of modern rocketry. Jack Parsons, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, some people say that it's Jack Parsons Lab, because he was instrumental in getting the United States up and going in its rocket. Everybody say, well, it's not rocket science. Well, to Jack Parsons, it was. Jack Parsons is the guy who came up with the formula that would actually send a rocket up into the air without blowing it all to bits. He got that idea from spirits that were telling him how to make this thing. So here you have Jack Parsons. Marvel figures. They made a comic book about Jack Parsons. 40 times he was called the Rocket Man, and he was steep into the occult. Jack Parsons and this guy here, L. Ron Hubbard, the father of Scientology, they were trying to do Aleister Crowley, let's go back here. Eliphas Levi conjured Yoda. Aleister Crowley conjured a devil called Lam, L-A-M, who just happened to look like the picture of every one of these gray aliens that you've seen, including the ones that showed up in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That came from Aleister Crowley. So then we have L. Ron Hubbard, and Jack Parsons, who were trying to do something that Crowley couldn't do. They said he had an unfinished work. They believed in a spirit test, a goddess called Babylon, B-A-B-A-L-O-N. It's right out of the book of Revelation. And what they wanted to create what am I trying to say here? They wanted to have a ritual that would bring forth the star child onto the earth from Babylon, which would basically be the Antichrist, the beast. They wanted to bring in and give birth to the beast. They never quite succeeded yet. It wasn't time yet. And so they failed. But these men are some of the most influential men in the world. You have Jack Parsons. You have L. Ron Hubbard, the father of Scientology, who's now gone on to be with the devils in hell. He's dead. L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology. John Travolta, Tom Cruise. You ever heard of those names? Movies that are Scientology inspired, that have these mystery ideas and these mystery concepts embedded in them. Two of which were blatantly and openly Scientologist propaganda. One was called Battlefield Earth. There's John Travolta. There's one that came out just recently. It's one of the big summer flops. It's called After Earth, and it's with Will Smith, also Scientologist. So they're telling you these mystery doctrines and these mystery secrets without you really knowing and understanding what they are. They're doing the work of the false prophet, teaching you of the Christs and the gods that God said don't go worshiping after. I mentioned to you earlier, looking at some of these comic book writers. Where did he go? Dan Brown knows his stuff. He's a researcher. He knows his stuff. Who wrote Harry Potter? She studied the occult. She knew magic. Was she a witch? I don't know. I just know that she knew her stuff. J.K. Rowling. The guy who wrote the script for this Son of Satan, Steve Gerber, I don't know anything about him, but he knows his stuff. They incorporate secret mysteries and teachings and magic inside of these books. And kids like me, I read them and I go, ooh, oh, help me, Son of Satan. He's a superhero. Jack Kirby. You ever heard of that name? Okay, if you know comic books, you know Jack. You know Jack Kirby. One of the most prolific comic book authors and writers and artists that there ever has been. He's like the god of comic books. He was the creator of the Fantastic Four, the Silver Surfer, and others. He was born, Jack Kirby's not his real name. He was born Jacob Kurtzberg, Jewish. He was raised in Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah. In fact, and I get this information from, what's the book? Our Gods Wear Spandex. And this guy who was a major proponent of these God themes in these comic books, he's not a Christian. He's telling you that all these authors, and this is where I got the information from, he's saying, yeah, they were all taught in the occult. Jack Kirby, he said at one time when he was a boy, he had pneumonia, and back then they didn't know how to heal, they didn't know how to give antibiotics, things like that. And he was about to die, so they brought in these Kabbalist rabbis to perform an exorcism over him. So he had an influence in the occult, and that comes out because he starts doing these things. He did a series called The New Gods. There it is right here, Jack Kirby's New Gods. Remember, that's what God warned us about. Don't go after the new gods. Don't follow the false prophet who shows you signs and wonders and says, let's go after the new gods or the other gods. God said, don't do it. And Jack Kirby said, I can do it. He's a false prophet. The comic book series, The New Gods, was part of what they called Jack Kirby's Fourth World Omnibus. It was a series of comic books. It was a collective of the New Gods, the Forever People, and Mr. Miracle. Here is a description from Our Gods Wear Spandex of what Jack Kirby's New Gods and his Fourth World Omnibus is all about. They were referred to as extra-dimensional gods superhuman beings who traveled to Earth with the use of the boom tube, sounds like a TV, a sort of stargate that bridged dimensions. Remember that? The God of the new gods was the source. Stop right here. Neo in the Matrix movies had to go and be injected back into the source. He had to go back to the source, the architect, the main computer mainframe. So it's the same idea, the source, the main functionary behind the force, which is the dragon. So the God of the new gods was the source, an omnipotent energy field that plays the exact same role in the Fourth World's comics that the Force plays in Star Wars. This is not me coming up with this. This was a guy who studies comic books, knows the mythology of it, knows the magic of it, and is in favor of it. And he's telling you what this is. Then you have comic book writer Steve Englehart. Here's one of his titles here, The Long Man. He is the one who came up with Doctor Strange. And here's what Steve Englehart said about this character, Doctor Strange, that he came up with. Notice what he said. When I took on his solo series, I decided I should learn a little about magic. And it led to a continuing interest in the subject. So Jack Kirby, Steve Englehart, some of these others, they're telling you they studied magic. And not just magic, M-A-G-I-C. M-A-G-I-C-K. That comes from Crowley. When I do this with little kids, okay? I do what I call little magic tricks. Actually, it's just prestidigitation and so on. Okay, I can make this guy disappear. Oh, look, here he is. Okay, that's what everybody says. Oh, do a magic trick. When it's magic with a C-K, you're talking some deep, deep stuff. You're talking Crowley and Eliphas Levi stuff is what you're talking about. You're talking about conjuring devils that should stay buried somewhere because these are mean and nasty things. Here's what comes to mind. In Revelation chapter 9, there is a group of devils that are hidden. They're kryptonited. They're locked away. They're secret. They're buried in the pit, the gods of the pit. And they want out. But a door, a portal has to be opened so they can be let out. Think about it. Alan Moore did stuff for DC Comics. One of his series was called From Hell, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Constantine, and V for Vendetta. Every one of these comic book series ended up being movies. From Hell. I saw League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I saw Constantine. I wasn't impressed. I've never saw V for Vendetta. He is described as a practicing ritual magician and student of the occult sciences. Neil Gaiman. Here is one of his here. He won 2005 Nebula Awards. Neil Gaiman came up with a comic series called The Eternals. It was based on Jack Kirby's Vril-Ya analog. Now, I haven't explained what the Vril is yet. It's a race of supermen that are under the earth. Get ready for this one. So Neil Gaiman comes along. Jack Kirby, who knows about the Vril, a race of supermen buried under the earth. Neil Gaiman is going to expand on that, and he comes up with a comic book series called The Eternals. Neil Gaiman's father was a student of L. Ron Hubbard, who was a student of Aleister Crowley. See the connection? As the father is, so is the son. This guy has a lifelong of learning of the occult sciences, Scientology, Aleister Crowley, you name it. Let's just lay it out like this. I know a lot about the Bible because my mom saw fit to drag me and my sister to Sunday school every Sunday morning, Sunday night for church, Wednesday night for church. That's all I've known all my life was what's in this Bible. Some of these other kids grow up in houses where they do rituals and they practice magic and they talk to devils and they do seances and they study occult books that nobody could touch. I won't even read some of them because they're that evil. And this is how this kid grew up in his house. And he knows about the Vril Yah. He knows about a race of supermen under the earth. I'll show you that in a little bit. A fellow by the name of Grant Morrison. He was responsible for the revamp of the Justice League, the X-Men, Fantastic Four. You've heard of all these. The Invisibles. In coming up with the Invisibles, Morris claimed that the Invisibles was actually dictated to him by an alien race he contacted while he was in the Himalayas. They inspired it. They inspired his ideas. The spirit of these false prophets. Let me show you what that looks like in the Bible. Ahab, the wicked king. And God was going to have Ahab led into battle, whereby Ahab was going to be killed, and the prophecy of Elijah was going to be fulfilled. And so God wanted Ahab to go into battle the next day. And so God is in heaven. This is coming from the scriptures. God says, who'll go and convince Ahab that he needs to go into battle? And a spirit, an evil spirit, jumped up and said, I'll do it. God said, how are you going to do it? And the spirit said, I will go and I will be a lying word in the mouths of the prophets of Ahab. Ahab had about 400 prophets. And so God says, go. And this spirit went down there and inspired these prophets to tell Ahab, Ahab, God says go into battle. You're going to be victorious. Ahab says, cool. The next day, the dogs are licking the blood out of Ahab's chariot. You see how it ends up? So there are spirits who indoctrinate, breathe, inspire. Comic book writers, novelists, theologians, book writers, movie makers. Here's the graphic here, the Justice League of America that Grant Morrison worked on. Here's several copies of The Invisibles that Grant Morrison said was dictated to him by an alien race. And this idea of these comic book writers being indoctrinated and being inspired to tell these fantastic... See, if it was just about a guy on a boat who caught a fish and brought it home to his wife and cooked it for supper, you wouldn't read it. Nobody would read it. It's got to be this big, fantastic, bizarre story that nobody's ever heard of. And the comic book writers now are simply standing on the shoulders of giants that preceded them. With the occult revival in the 1800s, you had a new line of books that were coming out. These were no longer just stories of Jack and the Beanstalk. You had Mary Shelley, who wrote of Frankenstein, Frankenstein's monster, the new Prometheus. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. The new Prometheus. Prometheus was a god. Bram Stoker's Dracula, H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, The Time Machine, Jules Verne, From Earth to the Moon. These were the science fiction writers of old who were expanding man's ability to think inside the boundaries of his three-dimensional world, outside of what could happen if. I mean, here, Mary Shelley gives life to a dead man. And now he's like immortal. He can't be killed. Okay, he's like Jason and Freddy Krueger, right? And what was the guy from Halloween? Michael Myers. Okay, these guys, they get killed one movie, they come back the next one, and you know it's going to happen. You know that once they're dead, they're not just dead anymore. It all started with this concept of the dying God. He's coming back to life. That's what Mary Shelley started with Frankenstein. The whole series today about teens falling over for these vampires started with Bram Stoker and Dracula, based upon a real character, Vlad the Impaler. But Bram Stoker took him in ways that no one had ever conceived of before. By the way, Tom Cruise starred in a movie that was based upon Bram Stoker's Dracula. War of the Worlds, about aliens coming down to Earth. The Time Machine, going into the future. And for some reason, H.G. Wells parts away from his religious indoctrination from the Church of England, and now he is visualizing a future whereby man has been altered, and now he becomes two races on the earth. See, I read the Time Machine. H.G. Wells also came up with the Invisible Man. And let's be honest, we all wanted to be the Invisible Man. You ever been at a party or around people that you didn't want to be around? Become invisible. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Jules Verne wrote about Captain Nemo. Interesting. Let me dig this guy back up here. Who came up with this? There was a guy that, Alan Moore. He came up with The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And the movie came out and I'm going, that'd be a cool movie. So I'm watching this movie, and guess who's in it? The Invisible Man, Captain Nemo, and several other of these famous 1800s characters, these supermen who can do all these fantastic feats. Now they're being brought together by a mysterious man by the name of Mr. M. And Mr. M basically, and you gotta see this. Let me show you this. Mr. M gathers together the Invisible Man and Captain Nemo and all these other guys, Alan Quatermain, into this room to be part of a new secret society. And look what's in the background in this Hall of Justice League. The square and the compass. The sons of God and the daughters of men. And when I first saw this movie and I saw that and I went, what is that doing there? Now that I've done the research and done the homework, I get it. The false prophets are leading us. Here's a false Christ, Captain Nemo. He has all these scientific powers. Alan Quatermain, who dies, and at the end of the movie he's resurrected by magic. Get it? The Invisible Man and all these are the gods. These are the people who can do things that nobody else can do. And they're part of a secret society, like a Justice League, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I mentioned the Vrilya. Jack Kirby took this concept and somebody else took it way beyond where Jack Kirby, but it's basically about a race of people that live under the earth. They're supermen. They have magic powers and they have eternal life. This was written in a book by Edward Bulwer Lytton called The Coming Race. Coming Race. And it's about a race of supermen that are going to rise up and dominate planet Earth with their super abilities and superpowers. Here's a graphic. If you've ever heard stories of like an inner Earth, that the Earth is the hollow Earth theory, and that you go up to the North Pole and there's a secret doorway up there and so on, well, I can tell you that it's true. It's called the abyss, the bottomless pit. And there is a Superman race under there, according to Revelation 9, according to the Scriptures. Jude said that they were angels that were being held in prison. So they are, and by the way, they're called the Vrilya in Edward Lytton's book, The Coming Race. They were superior to all of the races. They got their power called Vril from what they referred to as the black sun. In other words, it was a sun inside of the earth, and that's where they got their power from. And that eventually this race was going to take over and dominate the earth. There was a secret society that operated inside the Tool Society. Let me tell you what the Tool Society was. The Tool Society was a group of occultists in Germany that many say gave rise to the dictatorship of Adolf Hitler. The Tool Society, based the word tool was, I think, a Greek word that described a city that was called Hyperborea, which means above the Borealis. The Aurora Borealis is above the Arctic line, the Arctic Circle. The Tool Society, this city called Toul, was up above in the north. Some say it was down below, but that's where they came from, the north. All through the Bible, and I've pointed this out. We did a video called the Secret, the Mystery Behind the UN or something like that. And if you look at the UN logo, there's a crosshair centered upon the North Pole. And according to the Scriptures, there is a super race, a nation, whose tongue you shall not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, that Jeremiah said comes from the North Country. So anyway, the Tool Society, which is based upon the idea that a super race exists up at the North Pole. Who else lives up there? Anyway, There was a secret society inside of that called the Vril Society. And some say they were the real movers and shakers of World War II in Nazi Germany. Here's their logo of the Tool Society. That's where Adolf Hitler got the swastika. And so, and think about this. Where is Superman's Fortress of Solitude? Remember, that's where we were broadcasting from last week, the Fortress of Solitude. Where is it? It's up at the North Pole, and it's a secret location that no one can ever know about except Lex Luthor, and he found it out. He found the secret, okay? But here's that swastika. Notice associated with the German eagle. I'll show you that in a little bit. Remember, an eagle is a god with wings, okay, just so you'll know. The swastika was their symbol, but Adolf Hitler didn't invent it. It came out of Eastern mysticism, Hinduism, Buddhism. It was a symbol of power and eternal life. The swastika basically, let me explain it, is the chromosomes, the X chromosome, with opposites built into it. You know that the legs of the swastika, they go in different directions. Okay? The 4 cardinal directions are earth, air, fire, and water. That's what they represent. It's like the force that's going to bring mankind into immortality. Let's read that passage out of Revelation. The 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from the earth, from heaven unto the earth. That's Starman. To him was given the key of the bottomless pit, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, there's that word power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God on their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months. Think of Superman's boy, he's 5 years old, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. Think about that. Think about the lion mark. And they had breastplates as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and their stings were in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. There is the Vrilia, right there. The Bible's telling you that they are in a pit. Jeremiah says they're coming up. When they come up, they're going to come up out of the north. That's where Superman lives. That's where the Vrilia live. That's where the whole hollow earth theory comes about, as coming from the north. The Bible's just telling you what this is all about. They're telling you the real truth behind the mystery doctrines that's coming along. There was another man that influenced German Nazi thought in the early 1900s. His name, here he is right here. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche. Gesundheit. Nietzsche sounds like somebody sneezing. Nietzsche. Okay? This guy was wicked. Okay? For whatever Crowley was, this guy was the philosopher of Crowley. All right? He hated Christianity. He hated it. And he had an intellect, which means he had the ability with his words to write scathing, pithy, very sharp words, intelligent words against Bible Christianity. He hated morality. There is an allegation that he had an incestuous affair with his own sister. He hated God, and in general, he was morally bankrupt. He is the guy. Here's an article from Time magazine. This came out, I think, in the late 60s, early 70s, called Is God Dead? They got that from Nietzsche. Nietzsche coined the phrase, God is dead. This guy hated Christianity, hated God. So remember, here is Charles Darwin comes up with this idea of evolution. Blavatsky runs with it and says that the gods are controlling evolution. And then Nietzsche takes it a step further and he says he advocated for the advancement of human beings so they could be more than human. Had a guy come up, just visit us in our church, and I appreciate his help in studying Nietzsche. He had all kinds of quotes. He sent them to me, and I really appreciate it. Here's what Nietzsche said about the evolution of man. One must make oneself superior to humanity in power, in loftiness of soul, in contempt. We are Hyperboreans, beyond the north, beyond the ice, beyond death. Stop right here. Where did that come from? It was inspired to him. Nietzsche had a devil inspiring him to write, "We are the Hyperboreans, beyond the north, beyond the ice, beyond death." He was referring to those that came out, or those that are coming out of the bottomless pit from the north country. He's giving you a clue of how mankind is going to be evolutionized beyond his current mortality. The problem that I sit here is not what shall replace mankind in the order of living creatures, but what type of man must be bred, must be willed, as being the most valuable, the most worthy of life, the most secure guarantee of the future. Notice that he says that what type of man must be bred. What was Hitler doing? Hitler was taking the ideas of Blavatsky and Nietzsche and trying to breed the Superman Aryan race. Documented fact, there was a program. Adolf Hitler went and found all these young girls, blonde hair and blue eyes, and then found all these guys with blonde hair and blue eyes, had the guys impregnate the girls, and Nazi Germany was raising these babies to be the superior race of Nazi Germany. A Superman race. Nietzsche wrote a book called Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Now, just a little bit of research into what he's talking about. Zarathustra was an ancient Persian mystical, sort of like a New Age guru. He would, in today's world, he would be from California. Okay? But that's who Zarathustra is. Zarathustra believed in, or Zoroaster. That's another name for him, Zoroaster. Ashtaroth. That's where the name comes from. Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, believed in this duality concept, that there was a good set of spirits and an evil set of spirits. And the good set of spirits was governed by a good god by the name of Ahura Mazda. You ever heard of a car company? Notice the wings, Mazda. That's where they got it from. They got it from Zoroaster's good god called Ahura Mazda, and he was in constant war with the god of evil. It was in this book, Thus Spake Zarathustra, that Nietzsche came up with the concept of what's called the Übermensch. Here's a picture of it here. You see Nietzsche, and he's opening up his shirt to look like Superman. Nietzsche was saying all men must become supermen, the Übermensch. Jerry Siegel, Joel Schuster, that's the two German Jews. That's where they got it from. So it starts 1800s, the occult revival, the seeds are planted, the books are being written, the philosophies, the doctrines being written out, the concepts are taking shape in Nazi Germany, which, by the way, at the end of World War II, when the United States went into Germany, and after Adolf Hitler died, we went and got all their scientists who were working on all of the programs, the Vril programs, this flying saucer programs that Hitler was working on, the rocket programs, the genetic programs, under Operation Paperclip, brought them all back to work for the good guys. You see, that's who Captain America works for, the good guys. Captain America had his DNA changed. Now he's a superhero. He's a god. Captain America, Superman, fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. So Superman is helping the United States fight the Nazis. So then we grab all the Nazi scientists. We want their programs working for us. That's where it came from. All men must become Superman. This book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. There was another German about the time of Nietzsche called Richard Strauss, and he wrote a song called Thus Spoke Zarathustra. You've heard the song. Ba, 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 bum, 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 bum. You've heard that song, right? Okay? Richard Strauss wrote that song, and it's about Zarathustra's idea, or Nietzsche's idea, of man becoming a god, or man becoming a Superman. That's what the song is telling you. That song was used by Stanley Kubrick, who took Arthur Clarke's book, 2001, A Space Odyssey. He based the idea of a space odyssey upon Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus, like a precursor of these comic books. And Arthur Clarke conceived in his mind that billions and millions of years ago, if you ever seen this movie, you get it, okay? That he was basically teaching Blavatsky's idea that mankind has been aided in his evolution. It just didn't happen. So Arthur Clarke conceived of this alien race, this unknown, unseen alien race, that all of a sudden puts this black monolith down amongst these monkeys that are just scavenging for food. And you see this image here. It's like an upward shot of the monolith. It looks like the unfinished pyramid with the eye of Horus sticking on top of it. That was Stanley Kubrick. That was his idea. And so while these monkeys are being influenced by whatever power is in this monolith, they're learning how to take bones and make weapons. And all the while, this song, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, is playing in the background. And then the movie progresses. Now we find the monolith on the moon. Then we find it at Jupiter. And at the end of the movie, mankind is now about to erupt into its next phase of evolution. You see the Star Child here. And while this Star Child's scene coming down to the earth, they're playing Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the song that says man is going to become a superhero. Interesting. The demonic rantings of Nietzsche undoubtedly had an effect on Crowley. There was a devil by the name of Aiwass who dictated a book to Crowley called the Book of the Law. Here's a picture of it here. The Book of the Law, Liber al Legis. Notice the symbol on the other side, the triangle, the dove, the oval shape, that's called a mandorla, and it's signed by the name Baphomet. The Book of the Law describes the ending of the current age. A new dawn is coming. The age of Horus, a Superman race of Aryans who are going to take over the world. A new breed. That's what was prophesied. All these books. Nietzsche. Who else did we talk about? Blavatsky, Crowley, Eliphas Levi. They all perceived of a time when the Vril was going to come over and take over the world and make men through the power of the Vril Yah, or the power of the Vril, the black sun. It's like the anti-sun. Christ is the Son of Righteousness. The beast is the anti-sun. That's where the power comes from. The power comes from the dragon. And it's going to turn men into gods. Now they're not just men, they're ex-men. Former men. We'll talk about that next week. We're going to conclude this series and basically show you what the end and the aim of the son of Satan is. This is Pastor Mike. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've been educated. If I talk too fast, go back and play it again. All right, we'll see you next week. We'll finish this out. Bye-bye.